AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made me a bridesmaid under the condition that I lose weight. I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my older sister, Claire, 32F. We've always been there for each other, whether it was helping each other with school, moving apartments, or giving relationship advice. I thought we were really close, and I was thrilled when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I always thought being in that position would be such an honor and a fun experience. Now, before I go any further, I'll admit that I've struggled with my weight my whole life. I've always been on the heavier side. It's something I've worked on over the years, and I have tried various methods to lose weight, but it's never been an easy process for me. I've had periods of success where I've lost a lot of weight, but I've also had periods of failure where I gained some of it back. I have health conditions that make weight loss even more challenging, and I'm sure many people can relate to the mental and physical toll it can take. But regardless, I've always done my best to be happy and confident in myself. When Claire first got engaged, she was really excited to start planning her wedding. She talked about how important it was for everything to be perfect, which I totally understood. But as the months went on, she started bringing up one particular concern in conversations about the wedding: her bridal party. It seemed like she was really fixated on how everyone would look in the photos, especially me. One afternoon, we were sitting in her kitchen, and she casually said, I've been thinking a lot about the wedding, and I really want all the bridesmaids to look their best for the photos. You're going to be standing next to me in a lot of pictures, and I just want to make sure that you look as good as possible. It would be great if you could lose some weight before the wedding. I know it's not easy, but maybe it would be worth it for the big day. I was shocked. She had never directly commented on my weight before, and it really caught me off guard. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I just sort of brushed it off and laughed awkwardly. But Claire kept pressing. She kept suggesting diet plans and workouts that she thought might work for me, sending me links to weight loss programs and recommending that I try certain meal delivery services. She also told me how great it would look if I could fit into a specific dress she had in mind for the bridesmaids. I felt humiliated. I've always known I'm heavier than most people, but I've never thought of myself as an embarrassment or something that needs fixing. I've always taken care of myself in other ways: my hair, makeup, nails, and my personality, of course. I've always prided myself on being a good friend and sister, and I didn't think my weight was something that should be a point of judgment. But apparently, I was wrong. I tried to talk to her about it. I told Claire that her constant comments were making me feel bad about myself. I explained that while I was open to losing weight for health reasons, I didn't want to do it just because she was asking me to. I didn't want to feel like I had to change who I am to meet some external standard for her wedding. It felt like she was saying I wouldn't be good enough unless I was smaller, which honestly hurt more than I expected. Claire got defensive. She said that I was being overly sensitive and that it wasn't about me being good enough. It was just about her wanting everything to be perfect for her big day. She said she didn't mean to hurt me, but I needed to understand that a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event and that everything had to look flawless. She even went as far as to say, if you want to look your best for the wedding, I'll support you. But I think it would be really awkward for both of us if you're in a wedding dress that doesn't fit, and I don't want that for you. I felt like I was being backed into a corner. On one hand, I didn't want to let my sister down, but on the other, I was not about to sacrifice my self-esteem and mental health just to fit into some mold that she had created for me. I told her that I loved her and that I wanted to be there for her, but I wasn't going to make a drastic change just for her wedding. I said that if she felt like my weight was an issue, I might not be able to be a bridesmaid after all. Claire was furious. She told me that I was being selfish and that I was making this all about me when it should have been about her wedding. She said she was hurt by my refusal to support her and that if I didn't want to lose weight for the wedding, then I shouldn't be in the bridal party at all. She said she would rather have a different maid of honor if I couldn't make that effort. She even suggested that I wasn't a good enough sister if I wasn't willing to do this one thing for her. I was crushed. I felt like I was being forced to choose between my relationship with my sister and my own mental and emotional well-being. Eventually, I told Claire that I couldn't be her maid of honor if it meant constantly being told I wasn't good enough. I told her I loved her and would support her on the big day, but I wouldn't be in the bridal party under these conditions. She didn't take it well, and we've barely spoken since. Now, the rest of my family is upset with me. They all think I should have just lost the weight for the wedding, that it's not that big of a deal. They say I'm being too sensitive and that I should have just done this one thing to make my sister happy. But I feel like I was asked to change something fundamental about myself for the sake of appearances, and I'm struggling to understand why it's so unreasonable to want to be accepted as I am. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made me a bridesmaid on the condition that I lose weight. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for telling my sister I wouldn't attend her wedding after she refused to let me bring my son. So a bit of background. I, 32F, have a 5-year-old son, Leo, who I adore more than anything. Leo is on the autism spectrum, and while he's generally a joyful, sweet kid, he can have meltdowns when overstimulated or if things aren't going according to plan. I've learned how to manage his behavior over the years, and I always make sure to have a plan in place before we attend any event or gathering. This isn't always easy, but I've gotten really good at it. We have our routines, and he's generally very well behaved, but like any child with autism, there are things that could set him off. My sister, Anna, 28, is getting married in a few months. We've always been close growing up, but our relationship has been a little strained recently because of different life choices, like me being a mom and her being super focused on her career and social life. There have been small tensions over the years, but nothing huge until now. When Anna first announced her engagement, she made it clear that her wedding would be a very elegant affair. She's always dreamed of a big, fancy event with lots of details, and I completely understood that. She also said it would be a kid-free wedding. At first, I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I understood that she wanted a night where she didn't have to worry about children running around. It's her big day, so I respected that. However, I did ask her early on if she would consider making an exception for Leo. I explained to her that Leo is a bit different from most kids. He can't always follow the same rules as other children, and there's a chance that he might need a little extra attention or have a meltdown. I told her I was more than happy to sit far away from other guests if necessary and take care of him quietly in a corner. I assured her that I would be vigilant about managing him and that his needs would not disrupt her day. Anna seemed initially okay with the idea. She said she would think about it, but a few weeks later, I got a message from her. She told me that after discussing it with her fiancé and some of her friends, she had decided that no kids would be allowed, including Leo. She said it was important to her that her wedding is peaceful and distraction-free, and that it wasn't fair to make an exception just for me and Leo. I tried to explain again why I thought it was important for him to be there, especially considering that he's family, but Anna stuck to her decision. I was really hurt by this. Leo is my whole world, and it felt like she was dismissing him as an inconvenience. It's one thing to set boundaries at a wedding, but this felt personal. My son is not a burden, and I felt like she was treating him as one. I tried to keep my feelings in check and even offered to not attend if she wanted, but she insisted that the wedding would be better off without him there. At this point, I told her that if Leo couldn't come, I wouldn't be attending either. I tried to explain that families should support each other, and it was hurtful to me that she couldn't make an exception for my son. She didn't take it well. She accused me of trying to manipulate her and make her feel guilty for something that was her choice. She also said that if I didn't attend, I was being selfish and would be missing out on the most important day of her life. I've been torn since then. On one hand, I do understand that it's her wedding, and she has every right to set the rules for her own special day. I get it, I really do. But on the other hand, I can't help but feel like she's being completely insensitive to my situation and dismissing my son's needs. It's a complicated situation because I've always supported her, and I've never asked for any special treatment before. But this feels different. I'm trying to balance the importance of my relationship with my sister with the fact that I can't leave Leo behind. I don't have a lot of family nearby, and my husband works long hours, so it would be really difficult for me to arrange childcare for him. I don't want to put that kind of stress on myself or anyone else, and I'm not comfortable with the idea of leaving him with a stranger, especially with his special needs. So, I guess my question is, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding if my son can't come? Should I just suck it up and go, even though it means excluding Leo from a family event? I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of trying to be a good sister and a good mom, but I'm not sure where the line is between the two. Any advice would be appreciated. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because of my poor choice in a partner. I, 29F, have a sister, Rachel, 32F, who's always been a bit of a perfectionist. She's very much about appearances, having the best of everything, and making sure her life looks flawless on social media. For context, Rachel and I have had a good relationship for most of our lives. We've had our ups and downs, but nothing that's caused any major rifts until recently. I've been dating my boyfriend, Jake, 34M, for about a year and a half now. Jake is a really great guy, but he's a bit rough around the edges. He's not wealthy. He's a mechanic, works with his hands, and doesn't have the polished look that Rachel tends to value. Jake has tattoos, a few piercings, and a strong personality. He's direct and doesn't know how to put on a facade for the sake of appearances. I love him for who he is. He's funny, caring, and supportive. So here's where the issue starts. Rachel and her fiancé, Alex, 35M, got engaged about 6 months ago. When Rachel started planning her wedding, she began to get very particular about the guest list. She told me early on that she wanted everything to be elegant and high society, which is definitely her style. I didn't think much of it at first, just assumed it was her vision for the big day. As the wedding day approached, I was talking to Rachel about how I was looking forward to bringing Jake with me. She immediately went into this whole thing about how Jake didn't fit the vibe of the wedding. She said that he was too informal, that his tattoos and piercings were unprofessional, and that he would bring down the tone of the event. I was taken aback and asked her if she was seriously saying that my boyfriend wasn't good enough for her wedding. Rachel tried to justify herself by saying it wasn't about Jake personally, but that her wedding was a special event and that people would judge her for inviting someone who didn't fit the aesthetic. She mentioned that she had to invite her work colleagues, all of whom were lawyers, doctors, or business executives, and she couldn't have Jake around when those people would be looking at him weirdly. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain to Rachel that Jake is a great person and that it hurt me that she was dismissing him over something as superficial as his appearance. She told me I was being too sensitive and that it wasn't a personal attack, but that she had to think about her image. Now, at this point, I started feeling like I was being put into a really tough spot. I had always supported Rachel, and I've never asked her to change her lifestyle or how she does things. But this felt like she was choosing her guests based on some warped sense of hierarchy. She was treating Jake like he wasn't good enough to be around her important friends. A couple of weeks later, Rachel reached out to me with a solution. She suggested that I could still come to the wedding, but only if I came alone and didn't bring Jake. She said she would understand if I didn't want to come without him, but that she really needed to keep her wedding the way she envisioned it. I was furious. I couldn't believe she was asking me to choose between my sister and my partner. I told Rachel that I didn't want to come to her wedding if I had to come without Jake. She said that was fine and that I was being unreasonable for not respecting her wishes. A few days later, I got a text from her saying that after thinking about it, she had decided to disinvite me from the wedding altogether. She said, "You've chosen him over me, and that's a decision you'll have to live with." I was shocked. I tried to call her, but she refused to take my calls. In the days that followed, I talked to my parents about the situation. They were disappointed in Rachel, but they also didn't want to get involved in a family conflict, so they kind of stayed neutral. My friends were all on my side, saying that Rachel was being unreasonable and that I shouldn't feel pressure to choose between my family and my partner. I don't want to sound like I'm just defending Jake, but I honestly believe that Rachel's priorities are way out of line. I understand that weddings are a big deal, but to me, the people you love and care about should be more important than trying to impress a bunch of strangers. Since the disinvitation, I haven't spoken to Rachel much. She sent me a few texts saying that she's hurt that I'm choosing Jake over family, and that family is supposed to come first. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling like she's completely disregarding my feelings, and it's hard to come to terms with the fact that she'd be willing to throw away our relationship over something so shallow. I've been going back and forth about whether or not I should just suck it up, attend the wedding without Jake, and try to salvage my relationship with Rachel. But at the same time, I feel like she's the one who should be apologizing for how she treated me and Jake. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because of my poor choice in a partner? Should I just let it go and attend, or should I stand my ground and continue to cut ties until she apologizes? AITA for asking my family to respect my boundaries and not come to my wedding? I, 30F, am getting married in a few months, and lately, my family has been really testing my patience when it comes to the wedding planning. Let me start by giving you some context. I've always been the odd one out in my family. They're all very traditional, family-oriented, and close-knit, while I've always been a bit more independent, introverted, and private. My fiancé, Ethan, 32M, is wonderful, and we've been together for 6 years. He's kind, respectful, and we share similar values when it comes to personal space and boundaries. We're both pretty laid back about most things, but we've been firm on certain aspects of our wedding. The issue began when we decided that we wanted a small wedding. We envisioned something intimate with just a handful of close friends, our immediate families, and a few colleagues. Neither Ethan nor I have huge families, and we both prefer quiet gatherings over big, extravagant parties. However, my parents, particularly my mom, have been really pushing for a larger celebration. They insist that weddings are supposed to be big family affairs and have started inviting extended relatives and family friends without consulting me first. At first, I tried to be diplomatic about it. I told my mom that I wanted a small, intimate wedding and that inviting too many people would make me uncomfortable. She acted like she understood, but then I found out she had secretly invited a whole bunch of people anyway. She even told me that it's not just your wedding, it's a family event, and that I would regret not having a big celebration later on. My dad has also been a bit of a problem. He's a classic don't rock the boat kind of guy, so when my mom started pushing the guest list, he just went along with it. He's never been one to take my side on anything, so I wasn't surprised by that, but it still stung. We had a few heated arguments about the size of the wedding, and I ended up telling them both that I wanted to keep it under control. My request was simple. Only immediate family and a few close friends. Things only got worse when my cousins started getting involved. They're all great people, but they've always been a bit much. They've never respected my boundaries in the past, and I was dreading the idea of having them at my wedding. When I expressed this concern to my mom, she said, "You can't exclude family, especially not the cousins." I explained that it wasn't about excluding anyone, but rather about keeping the day special and manageable. She didn't take it well. Then came the issue of the wedding dress. I found a dress that I absolutely love, simple, elegant, and fitting for the kind of wedding I wanted. My mom, however, was dead set on me choosing something more appropriate for the event, meaning something bigger, fancier, and more dramatic. She even made a few appointments at bridal shops behind my back, trying to get me to pick something she liked. I had to cancel those appointments and tell her, again, that I wanted to make the decision myself. She cried when I told her no, claiming that she was just trying to help me have a beautiful wedding. It wasn't just my mom either. My aunt, who I'm really close to, has been giving unsolicited advice on every single detail. She's been telling me how to arrange the flowers, what kind of music to have, and even what kind of food should be served. I tried to be polite, but it was getting to the point where I felt like she was planning the wedding for me instead of letting me have the final say. I even had to tell her that I didn't need her to help with the decorations because I wanted to do it myself, and that made her feel like I was rejecting her too. It all came to a head about a week ago. My mom and I had another disagreement about the guest list, and I ended up saying something along the lines of, "If you keep inviting people without asking me first, I'll just elope." That sent her into a full-blown meltdown. She called my dad, and they both started accusing me of being selfish and unreasonable. They said I was throwing a fit and that I needed to grow up and compromise. Ethan tried to stay out of it, but even he was getting frustrated by how manipulative my mom was being. I know my family loves me, but I feel like they've completely disregarded my wishes and are turning what should be a happy, exciting time into a source of stress. I just want to get married in peace, surrounded by the people who truly support us, without all the drama. The worst part is that now, because I've been so firm with my boundaries, I feel like they're all looking at me as the bad guy. I'm not asking for a wedding where nobody has any say, but I do think it's reasonable to want a wedding that reflects my personality and values. My fiancé, and I don't want to be pressured into having a wedding that feels more like an obligation than a celebration. But at this point, I'm wondering if I'm being too rigid, especially since it's so important to my family to have all their relatives involved. I feel guilty, but I also feel like I've made it clear that this is about us, not about appeasing everyone else. So, AITA for asking my family to respect my boundaries and not come to my wedding if they can't accept the limits I've set. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with me after she disrespected my house. So here's the deal. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, Tom, 32M, for 3 years. Tom has an older sister, Lisa, 35F, who I've never really gotten along with. From the start, I tried to make an effort to be kind and welcoming toward her, but she's always had this attitude of superiority around me. She constantly undermines me, talks down to me, and is just generally rude. For the first few years of our marriage, I just chalked it up to her being overprotective of her younger brother. I thought maybe if I showed her respect, she'd warm up to me eventually. However, things took a turn last year when she came to visit us for a weekend. It was supposed to be a short visit, just Friday evening to Sunday morning, but by Sunday afternoon, I was so done with her behavior that I've had a hard time letting go of what happened. I had just finished putting together a big dinner for all of us, and I was feeling proud of the meal. I really enjoy cooking, and I went all out. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a homemade dessert. Everyone was sitting around the table, and I had just placed the food down when Lisa immediately commented, "This is what we're eating? Is this it?" Now, I can handle constructive criticism if it's coming from a place of love, but Lisa didn't seem to be trying to help or suggest something better. It was more like she was looking for something to criticize, and it didn't sit well with me. I tried to ignore it and carry on with the evening. However, as the dinner went on, Lisa kept making passive-aggressive remarks about my cooking. At one point, she even told my husband that he should have been more involved in the kitchen since I was clearly struggling with preparing such a big meal. I couldn't believe it. I was the one who spent hours prepping, and she had the nerve to suggest I couldn't handle it. My husband noticed, but he didn't step in immediately because, I guess, he didn't want to start any conflict. When dinner was over, I cleared the table and told Tom that I was going to relax in the living room for a bit while he cleaned up. I wasn't trying to be lazy or rude, but I was exhausted. I had cooked all day, and I needed a break. Tom didn't mind, but Lisa, of course, had something to say. "Wow, must be nice to just sit back while your husband does all the work," she said, loud enough for me to hear. I shot her a look, but didn't say anything, figuring it wasn't worth arguing over at that moment. But honestly, I was steaming. Then, things escalated even more. After the meal, we sat down in the living room to watch a movie. Lisa chose the movie, and after it started, she kept making comments about the film, interrupting the dialogue, and loudly asking questions that were clearly answered in the film. I asked her to be quiet a few times, but she ignored me completely. At one point, I said, "Could you please let us watch the movie in peace?" And she snapped back, "I didn't realize I had to be so polite in your house." That comment hit me hard. I went to bed that night, feeling frustrated, but tried to let it go. The next day, though, things took a turn for the worse. Lisa was getting ready to leave, and while she was packing up, I overheard her talking to Tom in the kitchen. She was complaining about me and said that she felt like I was acting like I was in charge and making her feel unwelcome in her own brother's house. Tom, being Tom, didn't exactly stick up for me. He sort of just nodded along and told her, "I don't think that's what she meant." But I wasn't having it. I walked into the kitchen and told Lisa that she had been rude all weekend and that if she couldn't show basic respect in my home, she wasn't welcome to visit again. Lisa was shocked. She actually said, "Are you serious? I can't believe you're kicking me out over something so small." But I stood my ground. I told her that I wasn't going to tolerate her disrespect, and she could leave if she didn't like it. She left shortly after, and I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders, but the situation still nags at me. I told Tom I wasn't comfortable with her staying with us again unless she could learn to treat me with respect, but Tom is still on the fence. He told me that maybe I was being too harsh and that Lisa had just been in a bad mood that weekend. A few weeks later, Lisa called Tom and asked if she could stay with us again. I was immediately on edge when I heard this, but Tom said he would talk to me about it first. We had a long discussion, and I reiterated that I didn't feel comfortable with her staying here until there was a change in her attitude. Tom argued that I should just let it go for the sake of family, but I feel like I'm being asked to put up with someone who's been openly disrespectful to me in my own home. Now Tom is a bit upset with me, and I've noticed some tension between us. He's been saying that I'm making things difficult with his family, and he's worried that this might create a bigger rift between us and them. But I feel like I've done my best to be accommodating, and Lisa just keeps pushing my boundaries. I'm tired of walking on eggshells in my own home. So, AITA for refusing to let Lisa stay with us after everything that happened? AITA for not attending my brother's wedding after he uninvited me over a disagreement about the guest list? So, I, 28F, have a brother, Ethan, 32M. We've always had a somewhat strained relationship, but things have gotten really bad lately due to his upcoming wedding to Laura, 30F. The whole situation is complicated, but let me give you some context first. Ethan and I were really close growing up, but things started to shift when he started dating Laura about 4 years ago. I never disliked Laura, but there were some things about their relationship that rubbed me the wrong way. For one, Ethan started to change a lot once they started dating, becoming more focused on impressing her and her family than on maintaining his old relationships, including with me. I'm a bit of an independent person, and I don't always go along with the crowd, especially when I feel like it's being manipulated. I try to voice some concerns to Ethan about how Laura seemed to prioritize her friends and family above everything, even Ethan. There were a few moments when she came across as dismissive of him, but Ethan would just brush it off and act like I was overthinking things. It really started to feel like he wasn't the same person anymore, and I felt left behind. But here's where things got bad. When they got engaged, Ethan told me that he and Laura had been working on their guest list, and he wanted me to look it over to make sure everything was good. I was excited for him and genuinely happy for the engagement, so I said sure. When I saw the guest list, though, I was shocked. There were a lot of people I knew from our childhood, some of whom I had barely spoken to in years, and there were also a bunch of people I didn't recognize at all, including a lot of Laura's extended family members who had never even met me. I immediately asked Ethan about this. I said, "Ethan, I don't mind that you want to invite Laura's people, but what about the people who have actually been there for you throughout your life? What about some of our childhood friends or people from our family who have supported you? This list feels very one-sided." Ethan got defensive and said that this was their wedding and that Laura had a right to invite who she wanted. I told him that was fine, but I was a little hurt that he had hardly considered anyone from our side of the family, especially given the close relationship we'd had growing up. He said that the guest list was practical and that I should understand that weddings are expensive, so not everyone could be invited. I thought I had a reasonable point. It seemed like he was giving way too much power to Laura's side of the family, and that it was a little unfair considering all the people who had been there for him in the past. But Ethan didn't see it that way. He accused me of being selfish and trying to make it all about me. He even said, "If you're going to act like this now, maybe it's better if you don't come at all." I was stunned. At that point, I didn't say much, but I felt this deep sense of hurt. We hadn't had this kind of argument before. I tried to be the bigger person and just moved on, but a few days later, Ethan called me up to officially tell me that I was uninvited to the wedding. He said, "Look, I don't want any drama at the wedding, and if you're going to keep making a big deal out of the guest list, it's probably best if you don't come." He seemed calm about it, like it was no big deal. And in that moment, I felt like he didn't care at all. I was devastated, but I tried to hold it together. I told him that if he truly didn't want me there, then I wouldn't push it. I said I respected his decision, but I was really hurt by how he had handled everything. He just shrugged it off and said that if I felt that way, there was nothing more to talk about. Now here's where I'm really torn. The wedding is coming up in a few weeks, and I still haven't been able to get over what happened. My parents are pushing me to just let it go and go to the wedding, saying that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event and that family should come together no matter what. but I'm struggling with the idea of attending a wedding where I was clearly not wanted. Plus, the fact that Ethan and Laura don't seem to care at all about how this affects me is really bothering me. I've talked to a few of my friends about it, and they all think I should just let it go and go to the wedding for the sake of family unity. But deep down, I feel like attending would be a huge violation of my own sense of self-respect. It's not like I caused any drama. I was just voicing my concerns about the guest list, and suddenly I'm the villain. I'm really torn because part of me wants to go and show up for my brother, but another part of me feels like I'm being disrespected. I don't want to be petty, but I'm finding it hard to let go of how dismissive Ethan was when I expressed my feelings. So, AITA for not attending my brother's wedding after he uninvited me over a disagreement about the guest list? Should I just suck it up and show up for the family? Or am I justified in staying home? AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house after she demanded I cancel my vacation? I, 32F, have a sister, Emily, 29F, who I have always had a somewhat complicated relationship with. I love her, of course, but she's always been the type to take advantage of other people. When we were younger, I had to step in many times to bail her out of trouble, whether it was with school, finances, or her personal relationships. I don't mind helping family, but it's often felt like a one-sided effort with Emily. She can be very demanding, and over the years, I've had to set some boundaries, which she doesn't always respect. For context, I've been planning a vacation for the past 6 months. I've saved up for it, booked flights, and got accommodations in a beautiful seaside town. This trip means a lot to me because it's my first vacation in over 3 years, and I'm finally taking some time off work. My partner, 34M, and I are going, and we've been looking forward to it for months. We've planned a quiet, relaxing trip where we can recharge. A couple of weeks ago, Emily called me out of the blue and told me that she was having issues with her current living situation. She had been renting an apartment with a friend, but the friend unexpectedly moved out, and now Emily couldn't afford the rent on her own. She said she needed a place to stay for a couple of weeks while she figured things out. I offered to help by suggesting she stay at my place for a bit, but I also made it clear that I was leaving for my vacation soon, and I wouldn't be around to host her. She agreed to this arrangement. Fast forward to last week, and I'm getting everything packed for my trip. I remind Emily again about my vacation, saying that she needs to make other arrangements because I won't be here to host her. She seemed understanding at first, but then, a day before I'm supposed to leave, she calls me in a panic and says that her backup plans have fallen through. She tells me she's really stressed out about being homeless and asks if I could cancel my vacation and stay home to help her out. She claimed that I could always reschedule the trip, but that she didn't have any other options, and she was really struggling. I was shocked. I thought she understood that this trip was important to me. I told her, as kindly as I could, that my vacation was something I had been looking forward to for a long time, and I wasn't willing to cancel it. I reminded her that I had already given her the option to stay at my place before I left, but now that I was about to leave, it wasn't possible for me to rearrange my plans. I suggested she look into staying at a hotel or with another friend. Emily didn't take this well. She started crying, telling me that I was being selfish and unsympathetic, and that I was choosing my vacation over helping her in her time of need. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me the most. I tried to explain that I wasn't abandoning her, and I still wanted to help, but I couldn't give up my entire trip just because she hadn't planned ahead. At this point, she started getting really angry and accusing me of never really caring about her or her problems. She said I had always been the responsible one, and that I used that as an excuse to make her feel like she was constantly failing. It felt like she was guilt-tripping me into canceling my vacation, and I just wasn't willing to do that. The conversation ended on a sour note, with Emily basically saying that if I wasn't going to help her, then I was no better than the people she had cut off in her life who had always let her down. I told her that I loved her, but I needed to prioritize my own well-being and that I couldn't cancel my vacation just to accommodate her last-minute crisis. I also told her that I would still help her by looking into other options, like contacting some family friends who might have space or helping her find a more affordable place. The next day, I left for my trip. While I was away, I kept receiving texts and calls from Emily, each one more emotional and accusatory than the last. She called me selfish again and said that everyone else had already abandoned her, so she had nowhere else to turn. My parents even reached out to me, saying that I was being harsh and that Emily was really struggling and I should reconsider my stance. But I stuck to my decision. By the time I got back from my vacation, Emily had found a temporary place to stay with a friend, so thankfully, she wasn't left homeless. However, she hasn't spoken to me since I left for my trip. I've reached out to her a few times to check in, but she's either ignored my messages or given me short, cold replies. It's been about a week now, and I feel like we're on the brink of a major fallout. I feel torn. I know that Emily is going through a tough time, and part of me feels guilty for not stepping up more, but at the same time, I feel like I've done what I can. I've helped her in the past, I've given her resources, and I can't always be the one to pick up the pieces when she doesn't take responsibility for her own life. I also don't think it's unreasonable to want to take a vacation after working hard for several years. So, AITA for refusing to cancel my vacation to help my sister? AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she ruined my dress? I, 30F, recently got married to my wonderful husband, 31M. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but my sister, 28F, made a nightmare, and I honestly don't know if I was wrong in my actions. To give some context, my sister and I have always had a somewhat strained relationship. We're very different people. I'm the responsible one, always planning ahead, being careful, and trying to keep things in order. She's more spontaneous, a bit chaotic, and has always gotten into trouble in one way or another. We've had our ups and downs, but I've always tried to be supportive of her. When I got engaged, I was over the moon, but I knew that one of the hardest things about planning a wedding was dealing with my sister. She has a tendency to make everything about herself, and I just didn't want any drama on my big day. That being said, I still asked her to be my maid of honor. I figured it would mean a lot to her, and despite her quirks, I wanted her to be a part of the wedding. The wedding planning process was stressful, to say the least. I tried to involve her in decisions, but she would either forget about things, not take them seriously, or flat out ignore my requests. I'd ask her to help with certain tasks, like choosing the bridesmaid dresses, and she would show up late or complain that she didn't like the options I picked. It wasn't ideal, but I thought, it's her way, and she's still my sister. I can deal with it. Fast forward to the wedding week. Everything was pretty much set. The venue, the decorations, the guest list, all of it was ready. My dress had arrived, and it was everything I had dreamed of. I had a moment where I stood in front of the mirror, admiring it, and I couldn't wait to walk down the aisle in it. It was a bit over the top, a custom design with lace, intricate beadwork, and a long train. It was expensive, but I knew it was worth it for a day that I would remember for the rest of my life. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. My sister showed up looking, well, let's just say she wasn't exactly dressed for the occasion. She was wearing ripped jeans, a crop top, and had this messy hair that made it clear she hadn't put much effort into her appearance. I try not to let it bother me, but honestly, it was a little embarrassing. I had asked her to wear something a bit more formal, but she just shrugged it off. At the dinner, she spent most of the time talking about herself, how her recent breakup was so tough, how she was dealing with this new spiritual journey, and how she'd been thinking about what she wanted in life. Basically, everything except the wedding. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just let it slide. The morning of the wedding came, and everything was chaos. I was getting ready at the venue, and I had my bridesmaids helping me into my dress. I remember feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. But then, right when I was about to put the final touches on my look, my sister came in, looking panicked. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking. "Not now, sis," I replied. "I'm about to get into my dress. Can it wait?" "No, it's really important," she insisted, stepping closer. I sighed, assuming it was just more drama about her life, but I agreed to hear her out. She pulled me aside, and with a nervous glance at my dress, she blurted out, "I borrowed your dress last night." I froze. "What?" "I borrowed your dress for a few hours to go out," she admitted, looking guilty. "I thought I'd bring it back before you noticed." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "You what? Why would you do that? It's my wedding dress." "I didn't think it would matter. I thought you wouldn't mind. I just wanted to see what it looked like, try it on and stuff. But when I put it on, I got a little carried away, and she trailed off, eyes wide, realizing her mistake. "Where is it?" I demanded. She hesitated. "It's in the back of the car. But there's something you need to see." I felt my heart racing as I followed her outside. She opened the trunk, and there it was, my wedding dress in the back of her car, but it was stained. The delicate fabric, the lace, the beads, all of it was ruined. There was a big splotch of red wine on the train, and the beads had come loose in some places. I couldn't believe it. I didn't mean for this to happen," she said quietly, clearly horrified. "I just wanted to feel special like you. I didn't think anything would go wrong." I was in shock. I don't even know how I managed to keep my composure in that moment. It felt like my world had just crumbled. That dress had cost a fortune, and now it was ruined, beyond any hope of being fixed before the wedding. My sister's face was pale, but I couldn't find it in me to comfort her. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out of here. I can't deal with this right now." "What?" "No, please. I'm so sorry. I'll fix it, I swear," she begged. "No, you've ruined everything," I said, tears filling my eyes. "I can't have you at my wedding anymore. Just go." At that point, I turned and walked back inside. I couldn't even look at her anymore. She tried to follow me, but I asked the staff to escort her out. She was crying, but I couldn't bring myself to care. My whole focus was on saving whatever I could from the day. Eventually, I had to call a friend to help me find an emergency replacement dress, but the damage was done. The wedding went ahead, and I tried to focus on the vows, the ceremony, and the celebration, but I felt like a part of me had been taken away. After the wedding, my sister reached out, apologizing repeatedly, offering to pay for the dress, and saying she never meant to hurt me. I get that she didn't do it on purpose, but it feels like she's never truly understood the gravity of what she did. My parents are torn. They think I might have overreacted by kicking her out, but I feel like it was the only choice. She ruined the one thing that I had been looking forward to for years. I'm just so hurt, and I don't know how to feel about my sister now. AITA for kicking her out of my wedding? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because of what she did to my daughter? I'm a 34-year-old woman, and I have a 9-year-old daughter named Ella. My younger sister, Emma, who is 30, just got engaged, and she's been planning her wedding for over a year now. Emma and I have had a pretty rocky relationship over the years, but we've always kept it civil for the sake of family, even though we both have very different views on a lot of things. Now, Emma's wedding has become a huge issue between us, and I'm feeling like I've been put in a very tough spot. It all started when Emma asked me to help cover some of the expenses for the wedding. Specifically, she asked me to pay for her wedding dress and the reception venue. I was hesitant at first, especially since I have my own family to care for, but I thought maybe I could do it as a gesture of goodwill. However, the situation quickly went from uncomfortable to outright frustrating when she insisted that Ella, my daughter, be a flower girl at the wedding. I love Emma, but I knew her history with kids wasn't the best, and I was worried about how she'd treat Ella on such a big day. I didn't want to deny my daughter the experience, though, so I agreed. But here's where things started to go wrong. In the months leading up to the wedding, Emma started to make a series of requests that really rubbed me the wrong way. For starters, she made it clear that Ella's role as flower girl would be extremely important, but she had very specific and frankly unrealistic expectations for how Ella should look and behave. She insisted that Ella wear an expensive designer dress, the cost of which would be almost half of what I was already planning to spend on her own dress for the event. Emma even went so far as to suggest that I have Ella's hair and makeup professionally done for the day, which, again, seemed excessive and honestly unnecessary. I tried to explain that we couldn't afford all of that, and that Ella was a young girl who didn't need all the extra fuss. Emma got upset, telling me I was being difficult and ruining the vision she had for her wedding. I told her I was trying to balance her requests with the reality of my family's finances, but she didn't seem to care. I began feeling like she was treating me and my daughter as though we were just accessories to her wedding rather than actual people. The last straw came about a month before the wedding, when Emma sent me a text saying that she had revised Ella's role in the wedding. Apparently, after discussing it with her fiancé and wedding planner, she decided that Ella wouldn't just be a flower girl anymore. Instead, she would be the mini bride and would wear a white dress that matched Emma's, walk down the aisle first, and even stand with her during the ceremony. I was livid when I saw that text. First of all, I thought it was completely ridiculous to treat my 9-year-old as if she was some miniature version of Emma, especially since I had already voiced my concerns about the dress. I also felt that this would be incredibly confusing for Ella, who was so excited to play the flower girl, and now Emma was essentially rebranding her as a mini bride for her own selfish reasons. When I confronted Emma about it, she tried to downplay everything, calling it a dream come true for her and telling me I should be flattered that she wanted Ella to have such an important role. She also mentioned that Ella's presence at the wedding was the only thing that would make the day perfect for her. I don't know if Emma genuinely thought that Ella would be honored by this change, or if she just wanted to take over everything, but it was clear that she wasn't considering what was best for my daughter. Ella was upset when I told her about the changes, and she felt uncomfortable with the idea of wearing a dress that was identical to Emma's. She had been looking forward to her own little role, and now it seemed like the whole event was being tailored around Emma's wants rather than her feelings. At this point, I was done. I told Emma that we would no longer be attending the wedding, and that I would not be paying for the dress or the venue as originally agreed. Emma was furious. She said I was ruining her wedding and that I was selfish for putting my daughter's discomfort above her big day. My parents got involved, and they've been pushing me to make amends, telling me that Emma has been planning this wedding for years and that I should just suck it up and do what she wants. They've also said that I'm being over-dramatic about the situation and that I'm causing unnecessary family drama. I've tried to explain that I feel Emma isn't respecting me as a parent and that she's treating Ella more like a prop than a person. I also reminded my parents that I have my own family to take care of and that I cannot just throw money at her wedding and go along with whatever she demands. But it seems like they're more on Emma's side. Now Emma is saying that I'm being a bad sister and that I'm sabotaging her wedding because of some petty grudge. She also claims that I'm jealous of her wedding and her life in general. I don't think that's the case, but I'm starting to feel really isolated. A part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh and if I should just swallow my pride and let things go for the sake of family. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding and pulling Ella out of the bridal party? Or am I right to stand my ground and put my daughter's feelings first? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for telling my brother he can't bring his kids to my wedding after he disrespected my fiancée. So, I, 28M, am getting married to my fiancée, Clara, 27F, in about 3 months. We've been together for 4 years, and it's been a pretty smooth relationship overall. We've had our ups and downs, but we always work through them. My family is excited about the wedding, and we've been planning it for a while now. The problem started when my brother, 32M, Sam, started making things difficult. He's married with 2 kids, a boy 6 and a girl 4. I'm really close to Sam, or at least I thought I was. I've always been the one to support him when he was going through tough times, whether financially or emotionally. But recently, he's been acting like a jerk. It started a couple of months ago when Clara and I were discussing the guest list. We're trying to keep it small, mostly family and a few close friends. The issue came up when Sam asked if he could bring his kids to the wedding. Now, let me be clear, I love my niece and nephew, but Clara and I both agreed early on that kids wouldn't be included in the wedding because we wanted to be a bit more formal and we just want to keep things focused on the adults for the day. We've both been to a few weddings where kids were running around, and it was honestly a bit chaotic. We didn't want that for our big day. So, I told Sam that we were keeping the wedding kid-free, and that his kids wouldn't be able to come. I explained it to him gently, and said that I hoped he understood. Well, he did not take it well. He started complaining that it was ridiculous to have a wedding without kids, that the kids wouldn't be a problem, and that I was being unreasonable. At first, I tried to brush it off, but he kept pushing. A week or so later, Clara and I were out for dinner when I received a message from Sam saying that if his kids weren't invited, then he wasn't coming. He said he wasn't going to leave them with a babysitter and missed the chance to be with his family. He then accused me of choosing Clara over family and said I was making a mistake by not including the kids. This really upset me, but I didn't respond immediately because I wanted to cool off. I spoke to Clara about it, and she was understandably upset too, since she's always had a good relationship with Sam and his kids. After a few days, I decided I needed to have a direct conversation with Sam about this. I called him up and we talked things through. I tried to explain again why we wanted the wedding to be kid-free and how it was important to both of us. I even mentioned that we're planning a small gathering with all the family at a park after the wedding where the kids could come and hang out, and we'd still have a chance to spend time with them. But Sam kept insisting that it was a family event and that no one should be expected to leave their kids behind. He even went as far as to say that I'll be the only one in the family not letting my kids go to their uncle's wedding. It escalated further when Sam said that he didn't want to be at a wedding where his kids weren't welcome. He told me that if they couldn't come, he wouldn't come either. I was really hurt by that. It felt like he was making this huge issue out of something that was supposed to be a special day for Clara and me. And instead of respecting our decision, he was turning it into something personal. Finally, I made the decision that if Sam couldn't respect our wishes, then maybe he shouldn't be at the wedding. I sent him a message telling him that, given how he was handling things, I didn't feel comfortable having him at my wedding if he wasn't going to respect our boundaries. I said that I was disappointed, but if it meant choosing between a drama-free wedding and having him there, I'd rather go without the drama. He didn't take this well. Sam called me up and was furious. He accused me of disrespecting him and his family and said I was selfish for not accommodating his kids. He even went as far as to say that Clara was controlling and that I was under her thumb. The conversation ended with him saying that I was ruining our relationship and that he didn't want to speak to me anymore. Now, my parents are caught in the middle of this. They've been pressuring me to let Sam bring his kids, saying it's a family event and that I should just let it go for the sake of keeping the peace. But Clara and I have both agreed that the wedding is our day, and we shouldn't have to compromise on it just to avoid conflict. My mom has even said that I'll regret not having Sam there, but at the same time, she agrees that it's my wedding and I should make the call. I've been feeling a bit guilty since the argument, but I don't know if I'm in the wrong. I know weddings can bring out a lot of emotions, but I also feel like Sam has crossed a line by not respecting our wishes and trying to make it all about his kids. I don't want to go back and forth with him on this, but I also don't want to lose my relationship with him. So, AITA for telling my brother he can't bring his kids to my wedding? Or should I have just let it go to keep the peace? AITA for not giving my sister my wedding dress? So I, 27F, am getting married soon to my fiancé, John, 30M. We've been together for 4 years, and everything's been great. We've had our ups and downs, but overall, we're in a really good place. My family has always been pretty supportive, though we're not exactly traditional. My mom, dad, and siblings are all relatively laid back and supportive of my decisions. The issue came up a couple of weeks ago when my sister Rachel, 25F, asked me for my wedding dress. Now, Rachel and I have a somewhat complicated relationship. Growing up, Rachel was always the golden child in the family. She's beautiful, outgoing, and very much the center of attention. She had no issues in the popularity department, while I was the more quiet, introverted one. Our parents always doted on her, and sometimes seemed to brush me aside. Anyway, fast forward to adulthood. Rachel is engaged to her fiancé, Derek, 27M, and their wedding is set for next year. I've been helping her out a lot with the planning, offering advice, and just generally being there for her. I was happy to help because, despite everything, I do love my sister and want her to have a beautiful wedding. When I was shopping for my wedding dress, I actually found the one about a month ago. It's a gorgeous dress, a lace ball gown with a vintage vibe. It's everything I've ever dreamed of, and it felt so right when I tried it on. My mom was with me when I bought it, and she was so happy for me. But she did mention something about Rachel swooning over the dress when she saw it. Now, here's the kicker. A couple of weeks ago, Rachel came up to me, and she straight up asked if she could wear my wedding dress for her wedding. She said she couldn't find anything she loved, and she knew I'd never wear it again. So, why not let her wear it? At first, I thought she was joking, but then she insisted. She even said that she'd make some minor alterations to it, and that it would be so special for her to wear the dress I wore on my wedding day. She argued that since we're both sisters and have a close bond, it would be a beautiful full-circle moment for her to wear it at her own wedding. I didn't know how to respond at first. It felt really odd to me, and I immediately became defensive about the dress. I mean, it's my wedding dress. It's something I've dreamed about since I was little, and the idea of it being altered and worn by someone else felt like a violation of that special moment. It wasn't like I was going to keep it in a box for the rest of my life. I wanted to preserve it, maybe pass it down, or even just keep it as a keepsake. The idea of Rachel, who's always been the center of attention in our family, wearing it just didn't sit right with me. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with the idea and that I wanted to keep my dress for myself. Rachel was immediately hurt. She asked me why I was being selfish and why I couldn't just share something so meaningful with her. She said that it would mean so much to her and that I didn't even need to be a part of her wedding for her to wear it. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her, but about the significance of the dress to me. I also told her that I didn't want it to be altered in any way and that it wasn't something I was comfortable letting anyone else wear. But she just kept pushing, saying that it wasn't a big deal and that I should be willing to make this sacrifice for her since we're sisters. She even brought up how she'd always been there for me during hard times and that I owed her this favor. At that point, things started to get more heated. I told her that I didn't owe her anything and that my dress was not a sacrifice I should have to make. I could see that I hurt her feelings, but I felt like I was standing my ground. I've always felt like my role in the family has been more of a supporting character, so this felt like one of the few times I could actually take a stand for myself. After the conversation, things got really awkward. Rachel stopped talking to me as much, and she seemed visibly upset whenever I tried to interact with her. Our family has noticed the tension, and my mom even pulled me aside to ask if I was really sure about my decision. She said that she understood that the dress was important, but I should consider how much it would mean to Rachel. I explained to my mom that I didn't want to give it up, and my mom just said that I needed to be mindful of how I handled this. I've tried to reach out to Rachel, but she's distant, and whenever I ask her if she's okay, she just says she's fine and changes the subject. I'm feeling conflicted because I do understand how much this could mean to her, but I just can't bring myself to let go of the dress. Now, the whole family is somewhat divided on this. Some of my relatives think I should just let Rachel wear the dress. That would be a beautiful gesture, while others agree with me, saying that it's my wedding dress and I have every right to keep it. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister wear my wedding dress. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her family stay with me after they disrespected my boundaries multiple times. So, a little background. 29F, have been living on my own for about 4 years. I have a decent-sized 2-bedroom apartment that I really love, and I've always prided myself on keeping a quiet, organized space. I'm a private person, and while I love my family, I value my alone time and personal space. I get along with my sister, 32F, but we've always had different personalities, and I've always been more independent, while she leans heavily on others, especially when things are tough. About 2 months ago, my sister and her husband, let's call him Mark, 35M, reached out asking if they could stay with me for a few weeks. They've been going through some financial difficulties, and their lease was up, so they were in between places. They have 2 kids, a 7-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. At first, I hesitated because I wasn't used to having anyone in my space for long periods, but I figured it was temporary and I could make it work. I set clear boundaries from the start. They could stay for a maximum of 2 weeks. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with any long-term stays and that they would need to make plans to find a new place after that time. I also mentioned that I needed my own personal space and would appreciate it if they respected that. My sister assured me they would be gone within the 2-week period, and she understood my need for privacy. The first week was fine. They were respectful, and it seemed like they were making an effort to adjust. However, as the second week went on, things started to get a little tense. My sister and Mark started using my apartment like it was their own. I walked in on them rearranging furniture without asking me, and when I pointed out that I prefer they asked first, my sister brushed it off, saying they were just making themselves comfortable. I let it go, but it rubbed me the wrong way. The kids were another issue. I'm not against kids, but I'm not used to being around them all the time. I had mentioned that I didn't want the kids running around the apartment, jumping on furniture, or playing unsupervised in the living room, as it was disrupting my routine. But it felt like my sister didn't take my concerns seriously. There were toys scattered everywhere, and I couldn't even sit on my couch without finding Legos or toy cars under my feet. When I asked her to make sure the kids picked up after themselves, she would give me a half-hearted apology, but then not follow through. The final straw came on the 14th day. My sister and her family had still not made any moves to leave. I politely asked when they planned to find a new place, and she casually said, "Oh, we're still looking. It's harder than we thought, but we'll be out soon. We're just waiting for the right place." I reminded her that the 2 weeks were up and that I wasn't comfortable with them overstaying. She got defensive, saying that I was being unreasonable and that she didn't have anywhere else to go. Mark chimed in, saying that it was a difficult time for them, and they didn't need the added pressure of worrying about finding a new place right away. At this point, I felt incredibly frustrated and overwhelmed. They had overstayed their welcome, and the entire situation had started to feel disrespectful. I told them they needed to start looking for somewhere else to stay by the end of the week, as I had a few things I needed to do in my apartment and couldn't continue living in this situation. My sister seemed hurt and accused me of being unsympathetic, but I reiterated that I had already been more than generous by letting them stay for 2 weeks, and I had my own life to get back to. They eventually left a few days later, but it wasn't without some tension. My sister hasn't spoken to me much since, and when we do talk, it's strained. I feel guilty about the situation, but at the same time, I don't think I did anything wrong. I set clear boundaries from the start, and they were repeatedly ignored. Now, my parents are involved. They've called me a few times to say that I should have been more understanding, that my sister was going through a tough time, and that it wasn't fair to kick her out when she was struggling. They said I should have extended my hospitality longer, and that family should always come first. I feel like they're not acknowledging the fact that my boundaries were not respected, and that it's not unreasonable to expect people to leave when they've overstayed their welcome. I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong here. Maybe I should have been more lenient. Maybe I could have found a way to help them without feeling like my own space was being trampled on. But at the same time, I feel like I have a right to my own space and to enforce boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her family stay with me longer than the agreed-upon time. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she banned my fiancé. I, 29M, have a sister, Emma, 31F, who is getting married in a few weeks. We've always had a somewhat complicated relationship. Growing up, I was often the one who tried to be the peacemaker when things went wrong. I've always been there for her, even when she didn't always return the favor. In general, I try to stay out of drama and avoid conflict. About a year ago, I met Sarah, 28F, who I now call my fiancée. We hit it off immediately, and we've been inseparable ever since. She's kind, funny, and genuinely a wonderful person, and I've never been happier. Unfortunately, not everyone sees Sarah the way I do, particularly my sister Emma. From the beginning, Emma wasn't very fond of Sarah. At first, I thought it was just her being protective or a little skeptical, especially since we hadn't been dating that long. But it became clear over time that Emma just didn't like Sarah, and she didn't even try to hide it. There were little comments here and there, like criticizing Sarah's choice of clothing or the way she styled her hair, but I brushed it off as harmless. However, things started to escalate when Emma started making more pointed remarks about Sarah's attitude and lack of class. For context, Emma comes from a pretty wealthy family, and I've always felt like she had certain expectations about who I should be with. Her standards for people seem to be very high, and it's clear that Sarah doesn't fit into the mold that Emma has created in her head. Sarah didn't grow up with much and has a very different upbringing than Emma, which I think is part of the issue. Emma tends to look down on people she sees as less refined. At first, I tried to talk to Emma about it, but it didn't help. She would either brush me off or accuse me of being too sensitive. One day, when I was visiting Emma, she made a particularly harsh comment about Sarah, and that was when I had enough. I told Emma that I wasn't going to tolerate her disrespecting my fiancé anymore, and that if she couldn't be civil, we need to take a break from seeing each other. That didn't go over well, but she eventually apologized, though it felt more like a forced apology than a genuine one. Fast forward to a few weeks ago when Emma announced that she was getting married. I was happy for her at first, but then she told me there was a catch. She asked me to come to the wedding, but she made it clear that Sarah wasn't invited. When I asked why, Emma explained that she didn't feel comfortable with Sarah attending because she's not really part of our world and that she didn't fit the vibe of her high society wedding. I was absolutely floored. I told Emma that if Sarah wasn't invited, then I wouldn't be attending the wedding either. I explained that I wasn't going to choose between my sister and my fiancé, and that Sarah was my future wife. She was going to be a part of every major event in my life, including my sister's wedding. Emma didn't take this well and immediately started crying, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was making her wedding about me. She even accused me of trying to ruin her special day, which felt like a low blow. It's been like this for weeks now, with both of us going back and forth, and I'm starting to feel like there's no resolution in sight. My family has been divided. My parents are on Emma's side, saying that she has every right to make her wedding the way she wants it, and that it's not unreasonable for her to want to feel comfortable on her big day. They've also said that if I don't go to the wedding, it will cause a huge rift in the family, and they don't want that. On the other hand, Sarah has been incredibly supportive of me through all of this. She keeps telling me that she doesn't want me to cut ties with my family over her, but I can't help but feel that if I attend this wedding without her, it'll just make me look like I'm choosing my sister over the woman I'm planning to marry. It's a really tough spot to be in. I've been talking to some of my friends about the situation, and their opinions are mixed. Some of them think I should stand my ground and refuse to go unless Sarah is invited, while others think I should just go and avoid the drama to keep the peace in the family. I'm torn because I don't want to cause a huge family feud, but I also don't want to let my sister dictate who I can and can't be with, especially when it comes to something as important as this. I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she banned my fiancé? Should I just go along with it and try to keep the peace? Or is it really a case of Emma being the one in the wrong? I've thought about reaching out to Emma again, but I'm honestly not sure where to go from here. I just don't want to lose my family over this, but at the same time, I can't just ignore how much Sarah means to me. I've been trying to talk to my parents about it more, but they keep saying that I'm making it about me and that I need to understand Emma's feelings. I'm starting to think this is a situation where no one will win, no matter what I decide. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, especially if anyone else has dealt with something similar. AITA for asking my best friend to stop attending my wedding after she gave me a horrible gift. I, 29F, am getting married in 2 months to my fiancé, Tim, 30M. We've been engaged for 10 months, and the wedding planning has been, well, stressful to say the least. There are family dynamics, budget concerns, and just the general chaos of organizing such an event. But, for the most part, everything is falling into place. One of my best friends, Emily, 28F, has been by my side through it all. We've known each other since high school and have been through a lot together, breakups, moves, job changes, and everything in between. She's one of my bridesmaids, and I'm grateful to have her in my life. That's why I was really surprised when I received the wedding gift she gave me last week. We've been friends long enough to know each other's tastes, so I was really expecting something thoughtful or personal. I had no specific expectations, but I do think it's a little strange when people don't put much effort into a gift for such an important occasion. When I unwrapped Emily's gift, I couldn't help but feel shocked. It was a giant framed picture of the two of us from our college graduation, with some sort of cheesy, inspirational quote printed underneath. Now, I'm not saying I don't appreciate the memories we've shared, but I couldn't for the life of me understand why she would give me something like this. It seems so out of place for a wedding gift. The quote on the picture said something like, "Friendship is the most important thing in the world." It's about the bond, not the occasion. I could feel my stomach drop when I saw it. I mean, it's not like I was expecting a Rolex or anything, but this gift just felt dismissive of the entire idea of a wedding. A wedding is a celebration of two people coming together for a lifelong commitment, and I wanted the gifts to reflect that. This framed picture felt like it had no real relevance to the occasion. I tried to keep my cool when I opened it, but my fiancé Tim immediately noticed my reaction and raised an eyebrow. He knows how much I care about the details of our wedding. and he knew this gift didn't sit well with me. I'm not one to blow up over something like this, but it stung. I'm sure Emily meant well, but I felt disrespected and hurt that she would give something so impersonal, especially when she knows how important this day is for me. Afterward, I tried to talk it through with her. I didn't want to come across as ungrateful, so I gently let her know that I didn't really understand the gift and how it made me feel. I told her that while I love our friendship, the gift just didn't seem to reflect the significance of the occasion. I also tried to emphasize that I wasn't upset with her personally, but more with the thoughtlessness of the gesture. But her reaction was completely unexpected. She got defensive and said that she thought the picture was actually very meaningful because it showed how much our friendship had grown over the years. She claimed the quote was her way of celebrating our bond and said it was a real gift because it was from the heart. She then accused me of being too materialistic for not appreciating the emotional value of the gift. I tried to explain that I wasn't upset about the emotional aspect, but rather that it didn't align with the celebration of my wedding. I wasn't asking for anything extravagant, just something that acknowledged the moment. It wasn't about the cost. It was about her taking the time to think about what my wedding meant to me. But Emily just couldn't understand. It got worse when she kept saying I was being unreasonable and that I was making her feel bad for a gift she put effort into. At that point, I was starting to get really frustrated, and I told her that it felt like she wasn't respecting the significance of the occasion. I asked her point blank if she understood that this was one of the most important days of my life. She said she did, but it didn't seem that way when she handed me that gift. Things really escalated when I mentioned that I was considering asking her to step down as a bridesmaid. I didn't want to, but I was honestly starting to wonder if I had made a mistake having her so involved in the wedding. She didn't take that well at all. Emily said that if I didn't want her there, then maybe she shouldn't come at all. She called me overly dramatic and said that I was blowing things out of proportion. To be honest, I didn't mean to hurt her feelings or make her feel like she wasn't wanted at the wedding. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like maybe she wasn't showing up for me in the way I needed her to. A few days later, I told her I needed some space to think things through. I didn't want to make any decisions in the heat of the moment, but at the same time, I felt disrespected and hurt by her lack of understanding. After a couple of days, I reached out to her and suggested that maybe it would be better if she didn't attend the wedding at all. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable with her as a bridesmaid anymore, and that I thought it might be best for both of us to take a step back. I explained that this wedding was a huge deal to me, and I didn't want any drama or negative feelings clouding the day. She hasn't responded to me yet, but our mutual friends have been texting me asking what's going on. Now I'm really questioning if I'm in the wrong here. I know she's my friend, and I know she's been there for me through a lot. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like her gift and her reaction were a clear sign that maybe she doesn't understand how important this wedding is to me. It's left me feeling unsupported and unappreciated by someone who's supposed to be one of my closest friends. So, AITA for asking my best friend to step down as a bridesmaid and possibly not attend my wedding after the gift incident. AITA for confronting my best friend after she tried to hook up with my boyfriend. So, to give some context, I, F25, have been with my boyfriend, M28, for about 2 years now. We've had a really solid relationship. We've never really fought, and things just seemed easy between us. I've got this best friend, Claire, F26, who I've known since high school. She's always been that friend that's super outgoing, a bit of a flirt, but not in a malicious way. At least, that's how I always saw her. Recently, my boyfriend and I went to a small get-together at one of his friend houses. It was a mix of people, some I knew, some I didn't. Claire was invited too, so she came with us. Everything was going fine. The party was chill, people were mingling, and I was mostly talking to some other girls from work. I'm not one to hover over my boyfriend all the time, and I trust him completely, so I figured he was fine chatting with the other people there. After a while, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, I noticed Claire and my boyfriend seemed to be talking pretty closely in the corner. I thought nothing of it at first, but I caught bits of their conversation. Claire was laughing, and my boyfriend was clearly being his usual jokey self. But then I overheard something that made my stomach drop. I heard Claire say, "You know, if you weren't with her, I'd totally be all over you." I froze for a moment, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to be one of those girlfriends who overreacts, so I decided to stay quiet for the time being. But then Claire laughed and said, "Don't worry, I won't make it awkward for you." Now, at this point, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I don't want to make a scene, so I go off to grab another drink and give them space. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I ended up going outside to get some air, and when I came back, I saw my boyfriend and Claire talking again, but this time, Claire was touching his arm a little more than normal. I don't know why, but I just had a bad feeling, so I decided to pull my boyfriend aside and ask him about it. I didn't want to accuse him of anything, so I just casually asked, "Hey, was everything cool with Claire in there?" He looked at me, a little surprised, and said, "Yeah, why?" I didn't want to get too specific right away, but I told him I overheard part of their conversation and felt a little weird about it. I mentioned the part where Claire said she'd be all over him if we weren't together, and I could tell my boyfriend immediately got defensive. He said, "It's just Claire being Claire. She's always joking around. You know that." I told him I didn't think it was funny and that it made me feel uncomfortable. He said, "I get it, but I swear it wasn't a big deal. I didn't think anything of it." Now, I don't know if I was overreacting, but I couldn't help but feel something wasn't right. So, I decided to confront Claire. I pulled her aside and asked her about the conversation I overheard. At first, she looked genuinely confused. She asked, "What do you mean? I don't even remember what we were talking about." I told her I wasn't blind and that I heard her say she'd be all over my boyfriend if we weren't together. She immediately started laughing, but it didn't feel like a haha, I'm just joking laugh. It felt like a whoops, I shouldn't have said that kind of laugh. She then tried to downplay it, saying, "It's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. You know I would never try anything with him. You know I love you both." But here's where it got weird. She then said, "Honestly, I just think you should relax a little. It's not like I'm going to steal him from you. I don't even like him like that. I'm just having fun." I don't know why, but that comment didn't sit right with me. It felt like she was trying to downplay the whole thing and make me feel like I was the problem for being upset. I told her I didn't think it was funny and that it made me uncomfortable. She just shrugged it off and said, "Okay, fine, whatever. But seriously, don't freak out over nothing." At this point, I was really frustrated. I didn't want to make a scene at the party, but I also didn't want to just brush it under the rug. I wanted to find my boyfriend, and I told him that I needed to go home. I told him I wasn't comfortable with how things had gone down and that I didn't want to stay at the party anymore. He tried to convince me to stay and said I was overreacting, but I stood firm, and we ended up leaving. Later that night, Claire texted me. She said she was sorry if she made me feel uncomfortable, but that I was being overly sensitive. She even said I should trust her more because she'd never do anything to hurt me, and that she didn't see what the big deal was. I didn't respond right away because I wasn't sure how to handle it, but eventually I texted her back and said that I didn't appreciate the way she brushed off my feelings and that I needed some space to think about everything. That was a couple of days ago, and now she's been sending me messages saying I'm overreacting and that she didn't mean anything by it. So, AITA for confronting my best friend and asking her about what happened with my boyfriend. I feel like I might have blown things out of proportion, but at the same time, it just didn't feel right. I'm really torn on whether I'm just being paranoid or if she genuinely crossed a line. Should I just let it go? Or do I have a right to be upset? AITA for demanding that my family pay me back for the wedding gifts I gave them. So, 29F, recently got married, and there's been some family drama that has me seriously questioning if I'm in the wrong here. To give you some context, my family is on the wealthier side, while my husband's family is not as well off. I come from a family of successful professionals, and my parents always made sure to provide for my siblings and me. My husband, on the other hand, had a much more humble upbringing, with his parents working blue-collar jobs and living paycheck to paycheck. When we got engaged, both families were excited and eager to help with the wedding in any way they could, but there was a clear difference in the level of financial contribution between the two sides. My family, being more financially comfortable, offered to cover a significant portion of the wedding expenses, from the venue to catering, and even paid for my bridal gown. My husband's family, while supportive in other ways, simply didn't have the financial means to contribute much, and I totally understood that. They offered to help with things like making decorations and bringing food, which was really sweet and thoughtful. Our wedding day was beautiful. We had a fantastic ceremony and reception, and everything went off without a hitch. However, After the wedding, there was a lot of talk about wedding gifts. Since my family had already spent a lot on the wedding itself, they didn't feel the need to give us as many gifts. That's when I found out something that really rubbed me the wrong way. My husband's family, despite their financial situation, gave us a very generous gift. Money in an envelope, a total of $5,000. I was blown away by how much they had put aside to give us this gift, and it really meant a lot to me. The problem, however, came later when my family found out how much his family had given us. My parents, particularly my mother, started making comments about how ridiculous it was that his family had given us so much money when they themselves hadn't contributed much to the wedding. My mom said something along the lines of, "They're practically strangers, and they think they can buy their way into the family with that much money? We've been supporting you, and yet they're the ones who get the credit." My dad didn't say much, but I could tell he was uncomfortable with the situation. I tried to brush it off, but it continued to nag at me. A couple of weeks after the wedding, my mom called me and asked if I would be willing to give her the $5,000 my husband's family had gifted us. She said that they were essentially compensating for the lack of contribution they had made to the wedding, and it would be fair for me to return that money to them. I was floored. My husband and I had already used some of the money for our honeymoon, but we still had a significant portion left. I explained this to my mom and told her that the money had been given to us by his family as a gesture of love and support, not as some kind of compensation for the wedding costs. She didn't seem to understand and insisted that it was a matter of fairness. At this point, I started feeling like my family was being overly entitled. I had a conversation with my husband about what my mom had said, and he was livid. He couldn't believe she would ask for money that wasn't even hers. My husband has always been very generous with his family, and the idea of asking for that kind of money back didn't sit well with him at all. Now, here's where I might be in the wrong. I ended up telling my mom that I wouldn't be giving her the money. I explained that while I understood her point, I thought it was unfair to expect me to return a gift that wasn't even mine to begin with. This caused a massive rift in the family. My mom went off on me, saying I was being disrespectful and ungrateful, and that I was letting my in-laws buy their way into the family. My dad didn't say much, but I could tell he was disappointed. My siblings, though, seemed to agree with me, and they told me that I wasn't wrong for keeping the money. My mom hasn't spoken to me in weeks, and every family gathering has been tense. My in-laws, however, have been very supportive. They say they understand the situation, and they don't want any of this to come between me and my family. But I feel guilty. I feel like maybe I should have tried harder to find a compromise, like offering my parents a smaller sum or something. At the same time, I can't shake the feeling that my mom is being totally unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my parents the money for my husband's family? I genuinely want to know if I'm being selfish here, or if I'm justified in not wanting to return a gift. I can't stop feeling like my mom is treating this situation as though she's entitled to something that isn't hers. Am I wrong for standing my ground? TLDR, my family is wealthy and contributed a lot to my wedding, but my husband's family gave us a $5,000 gift. My mom asked for me to give her the $5,000 as compensation for her lack of financial contribution to the wedding, and I refused. Now there's tension in the family, and I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong for not giving her the money. AITA for confronting my sister about her constant disrespect towards my partner? So, I, 28M, have been in a relationship with my partner, Sam, 30M, for about 2 years now. Things have been pretty great between us, and Sam has been incredibly supportive of me in both my personal and professional life. We're comfortable with each other and have a strong bond. My sister, Emily, 25F, on the other hand, has never been a fan of Sam. We've always had a bit of a rocky relationship, even though we're family. She's always been very critical of the people I date, but with Sam, it's taken a different turn. At first, I thought it was just a phase, but it's been going on for months, and I'm starting to get really frustrated. The first incident happened about a year ago, when Sam and I invited my family over for dinner at our place. Emily made a rude comment about the food Sam had prepared, saying it was bland and tasted like something you'd serve at a cheap diner. Sam was upset, but he didn't say anything. He's the type of person who hates confrontation and prefers to just let things slide, so I let it go too. I figured it was just a one-off comment. Over the months, Emily's comments about Sam started to become more frequent and personal. She criticized his clothing, the way he spoke, his job. He works in tech, and she's always made it sound like it's not a real job, and even his hobbies. One time, when we went on a family trip together, she mocked Sam's choice of books, calling them boring and too intellectual. Sam, again, just laughed it off, but I could tell it bothered him. What really set me off, though, was about 2 months ago when Emily came over to my place while Sam and I were cooking dinner. Sam and I were in the kitchen, and I asked Emily if she wanted a drink. She made a face and said, "I'm fine, I don't drink the same cheap stuff as Sam." She then proceeded to loudly complain to my mother about how unattractive Sam is and how I could do so much better. I had had enough at this point. I've always tried to stay neutral in family matters, but Emily's constant disrespect toward Sam was taking a toll on our relationship. So, that night, after dinner, I decided to talk to her about it. I asked her if we could have a private conversation in the living room, away from everyone else. I was calm but firm. I told her that I was tired of her disrespecting Sam. I said, "Emily, I'm asking you as my sister to stop being rude to Sam. He's important to me, and I don't appreciate the way you talk about him. I don't know why you think it's okay to constantly tear him down, but it's not acceptable." Emily was visibly surprised by my confrontation and tried to brush it off by saying, "I'm just being honest. You're so sensitive. He's not my type, and I don't see what you see in him. I'm just looking out for you." She also claimed that I was letting Sam walk all over me because I didn't stand up for myself when Sam did something she didn't approve of. I told her that Sam wasn't walking all over me, and I had no intention of letting her dictate who I should or shouldn't date. I also made it clear that Sam and I were a team, and if she couldn't be respectful, then maybe she shouldn't be around us. It was harsh, but I was really tired of her behavior. The conversation ended somewhat awkwardly, and Emily left the house early. The next day, I received a message from my mother asking me what happened. Apparently, Emily had told her that I attacked her for simply giving her honest opinions. My mom then went on to tell me that I was overreacting and that family members are supposed to be able to express their opinions without fear of retribution. That's when I really started to feel conflicted. I felt like my mother was taking Emily's side, and that just made me more frustrated. I've always been the one who tries to mediate between family members, but this felt like too much. My partner is a good person, and he deserves respect from my family, not constant judgment and criticism. I understand that not everyone will love who I date, but Emily's behavior felt malicious, not like honest opinions. Since that conversation, Emily hasn't really spoken to me much. She's ignored my calls, and when we've had family gatherings, she avoids me and Sam. I've had some guilt over whether I handled it the right way, but at the same time, I feel like I had to stand up for Sam. It's one thing for a family member to be a little critical or make a joke, but the way Emily has been acting feels like she's actively trying to drive a wedge between us. Now, my family is divided. My mother thinks I overreacted and that I should have just let Emily express herself, while my father and some of my cousins have told me that they support me and think Emily is being too harsh. Sam, of course, has been supportive and says that he understands why I did it, but I don't want to keep dragging him into family drama. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior toward my partner? I just want peace and for everyone to get along, but I'm not sure if I handled this the right way. AITA for cutting ties with my sister after she moved into my house without asking. So, a bit of background. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emma, 25F, who I've always been close to. We've had our disagreements growing up, but we generally got along pretty well. I live in a 3-bedroom house that I've had for about 2 years now. I moved out of our parents' place after I graduated college and found a decent job in the city. My sister was still living at home while she tried to figure out her career, but she never really seemed to settle into any one thing. We've always been supportive of each other, but things started changing about 6 months ago. Around that time, Emma lost her job. She'd been working as a freelance graphic designer, but she was struggling to find consistent work. She had already been bouncing from one job to another, but this time, it seemed like everything had fallen apart for her. She came to me in tears one day and told me she didn't know what to do. I, of course, offered her my support, told her she could stay with me for a little while if she needed help getting back on her feet. I have a space, and I genuinely didn't mind. Now, I had told her from the start that it would be temporary, just until she found something stable or figured out what she wanted to do. She agreed and assured me she wouldn't overstay her welcome. She moved in, and at first it was okay, but things started to get a little messy. Emma has always been a bit messy. I'm not a super neat freak, but I like to keep things organized. She wasn't cleaning up after herself, leaving dishes around, not doing her laundry, and it was getting to the point where I was doing a lot of the housework myself. At first, I let it slide. She was going through a tough time, and I figured I could help her out. But then it got worse. A lot worse. She started having friends over all the time, like at least 2 or 3 times a week. She didn't ask if it was okay, just invited them over without giving me a heads up. And these weren't just casual hangouts. They were loud, sometimes late into the night, and they left the house in a complete mess. Empty bottles, food wrappers all over the place. It was like I was running a hotel, and nobody respected any boundaries. When I would bring it up, she'd get defensive, saying things like, "It's my space too," or "I'm just trying to have some fun while I'm here." I'd explain that I don't mind if she has people over occasionally, but it's starting to feel like my place was no longer my place, and she didn't respect my need for quiet and personal space. She'd apologize, but then it would happen again the very next week. The final straw came when she moved in a boyfriend, Will, without telling me. One night, I came home from work, and there was this guy sitting on the couch. I didn't even know who he was. She casually introduced him, saying he'd be staying over for a while. I was honestly shocked. She hadn't even mentioned she was seeing anyone, let alone that she was going to have a move-in. I thought I must have missed something, but nope, this was news to me. When I asked her what was going on, she just shrugged it off like it wasn't a big deal. "It's fine. We're just staying for a bit," she said. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with someone I'd never met staying in my house without any prior conversation or agreement. It wasn't about the boyfriend, but more about the lack of respect for me and my space. At that point, I was really starting to feel like she wasn't even considering my feelings anymore. I felt like I was being taken for granted. I asked her if she could give me a heads up about these kinds of things, or, at the very least, ask if it was okay to have someone else move in. She was super annoyed with me, and we got into a pretty big argument. She accused me of being controlling and said I was overreacting. After that fight, things just escalated. I tried to talk to her about it again a few days later, but every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. She would act like nothing was wrong, but then there would be more issues. Will would leave his stuff around, and sometimes he'd just hang out in the living room all day while I was trying to work from home. Emma wasn't around, and I felt like I was living with a stranger in my own house. I tried setting some boundaries. I told Emma that she couldn't have people over more than once a week without asking me first. I told her that if I was going to stay over, she had to give me a heads up. She seemed to agree, but then nothing changed. I tried to make it clear that I needed her to respect my space, and she would say she would, but nothing ever came of it. So after about 2 months of this, I had enough. I tried being patient, I tried being understanding, but I felt like I was being walked all over. I finally told Emma that I couldn't continue living like this, and that it wasn't working anymore. I told her that she needed to find another place to stay. She was shocked and really upset, asking me why I was being so harsh, considering she was family. Honestly, I felt terrible about it, but I also felt like I had no other option. I had given her so many chances to change her behavior, and it never did. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own comfort and peace of mind just because she was having a rough time. I know she's my sister, but I also have to set boundaries for myself. Now, she's not talking to me, and our parents are caught in the middle. My mom keeps telling me that I should have been more patient, but my dad says I did the right thing. My friends are split. Some say I was too harsh. Others agree that I needed to stand up for myself. AITA for asking my sister to leave my house after all the issues we've had. I feel guilty, but at the same time, I think I did what was best for my mental health. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.